Hi, I'm Hema Patel. I am a chartered accountant and I am the General Manager of Lightbox.
Hi, my name is Priya Singh. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm a senior consultant at Deloitte Consulting in their strategy and operations team. I'm also the founder and CEO of two social enterprises, the Mentor Me Fiji Foundation and Karma Collective.
Hi, my name is Nick Lee. I'm a chartered accountant. I'm head of Asia Services Group at Grant Thornton, one of the world's leading financial advisory firms.
Hi, I'm Deborah Buckley. I'm the Chief Executive for the New Zealand Institute of Management and Leadership.
Hi, welcome to the Chartered Accountants Australia and New Zealand Career Series. I'm Louisa. In this 4-part series, we'll get the answers to the questions you've been asking to help you get on your way to being work ready and forging your career path in business and accounting. We'll talk to the experts and business professionals who were in your shoes not so long ago by covering topics on personal branding, stepping into the workforce, nurturing business relationships, and how you can get the skills to become a great future leader. Instead of a standard Q&A session, we're going to mix it up a little and get our speakers to draw questions out of a bowl to keep them on their toes.
My 6-year-old asked me this question this morning. How would you define leadership and what does it mean to you?
Well, since it's peanut butter and jam, it's probably not appropriate. Wine and cheese, let's go with that one.
Do you forget her name?
Yeah, I did forget my surname. That's a great catch. This is great teamwork.
In this session, Rising to Leadership, we'll delve into the steps you need to take to become an effective leader in the industry and advice on what you can do now to achieve your career goals. We'll hear from Hema Patel, General Manager at Spark, Nick Lee, Associate Corporate Finance at Grant Thornton, Priya Singh, Senior Consultant, Strategy and Operations at Deloitte, and Deborah Buckley, CEO of the New Zealand Institute of Management and Leadership. They'll share some of their experience and advice on how they established the right foundations so they could accelerate their career into a leadership role.
How would you define leadership and what does it mean to you?
So leadership to me can be a bit wishy-washy. It's one of those soft skills that people get as they go on. To me, leadership means being able to put together a vision and motivate people to achieve that vision and that long-term goal.
Yeah. No, that's true. It is very wishy-washy, and there's that age-old question, right? Are you born a leader or are you made a leader? I think there's a leader in everyone, and leaders are actually awoken. They're not made or born. For me, I think the best example of a leader is Tom Brady, who's the quarterback of the New England Patriots, and he defines what leadership means to me, and what it means is the highest amount of trust you have in someone who's leading you to get you there, and that's what I aspire to be as a leader.
To me, leadership is about taking risks. It's about being willing to ask for help from others. For me, being a leader is probably the most important thing I do every single day. And the reason why is because if I'm leading, someone's following me, and I've got to be mindful about where it is I take those people. Leadership is about honesty, integrity, it's about being thankful, and it's about truly knowing what it is that drives you.
I think leadership is about having courage and setting an example. So I don't think leaders necessarily are very senior people always. You can be a very junior person in a business and still be a leader. Leadership is about a mindset and kind of how you come across. And I'll give you an example. There's a couple of girls that I work with in Spark, and they said to him, we'd like to set up a group for helping other women through the business. This is cool, okay, can you help us? Of course I'll help you. But the leadership that those two girls have shown, they don't have any teams of people in their day-to-day jobs, but the leadership is about them wanting to do more and be more as people and bring that through the organisation, and I thought that was an amazing leadership quality.
What advice have you been given by someone you consider a great leader? For me, if I think about the one piece of leadership advice that I got that I've kind of kept with me and has really helped me do other stuff, like create my social enterprises, is from one of the partners that I worked with. So I started out, when I graduated from university, I started out in audit, and then I moved on to strategy and operations consulting, all within Deloitte. So when I was still in audit, I worked a lot with a partner called Peter Gulliver, who's also a chartered accountant, as they all are. But Peter and I worked a lot together, and once we were going over a report together, and he said something And I didn't really agree with what he said. I was like, Peter, I think you're wrong. But I didn't want to say it that way. So I kind of hesitated. He was like, what do you think? Which, again, is a really good sign of a good leader, I think, is that they always ask for opinions, even though they've got a million years of experience behind them. They're always asking their teams for their opinion. So he was kind of like, what do you think? And I was like, oh my God, Peter, I think you're wrong. So I was like, I ummed for a while. And then he's like, tell me if you think I'm wrong. And that is why you manage my jobs and why I choose you to manage my jobs. It's because I don't want to have someone on my jobs who's always agreeing with me and nodding with me. And then he said, the best thing you can do as a leader is to make sure that when you're in a room, you're not surrounded by people who are just nodding and agreeing with everything that you're doing, because one of you is redundant when you're in that room together. And I really took that on, and when I've created my teams with the Mentor Me Fiji Foundation and with Karma Collective, I've made a conscious effort to surround myself with people who feel comfortable to challenge me and people who come from different walks of life and different expertise, so that the enterprises can be better.
So one of the things that I was taught very early on, and actually this is incredibly relevant because it was when I was doing my 6-hour exam in those days for my final chartered accountancy qualification. And it was incredibly stressful, and I was working, and I just didn't know how I'd get through the next sort of week. And it was actually a spiritual leader, so I said, look, I'm really struggling here, what am I going to do? And something that he said to me that's just stayed with me forever is, Hema, you need to have faith in yourself. Do you believe you can do this? I'm like, yeah, I do. He's like, if you have faith in yourself, everyone will have faith in you and it will happen. And for me, it's so relevant in every part of what I do. So am I a good mother? Am I a good leader? Am I a good person? So I need to have faith in myself, and it will just be.
I think I'm given great advice every day by the people around me. For me, I work with a really amazing team. Actually, by chance, they're all women. But they're connected to one another, they're connected to the vision, they're connected to each other in terms of their values, in terms of their beliefs, in terms of what it is we stand for as an organisation. But a long time ago, a leader gave me one great piece of advice. He was a Kiwi living in Australia, and he said to me, Deb, while you do the same thing as everyone else, do one thing that matters most. Do one thing that you are passionate about and that you think you can excel in. So for me, that was public speaking. I've got a big mouth, I like to talk a lot. It seemed a really easy fit. But what it means now is when I go for a job as a chief executive, when I go for a job interview or an application, and they say to me, what is it that you're good at? I can actually say to them, well, actually, I'm probably better than average and I'm better than most at one thing. And the reason that matters to me so much in terms of being a leader or in terms of advice is that I hadn't ever thought about the difference between being good and being extraordinary. I don't need to be exceptional at everything, but if I can be extraordinary at one thing, it sets me apart from everyone else.
Now you are in a leadership position, what tips would you share with students?
Very interesting question. I'll say, as a student, time is your most important asset. So use that time efficiently and also smartly is the best way to help you find a job first and firstly understand what you want to do and find a job and achieve your goals.
This has taken me a little bit of time to learn and know, but I would probably say that it's really important to get to know yourself first. Know who you are as a person, know what triggers you, know what makes you tick. Because if you can understand that about yourself, you'll know what your values are and what's really important to you. I remember a job that I worked in, and I really enjoyed it, but it was incredibly frustrating as a job. And I couldn't work it out. And it wasn't until probably 2 or 3 years after I left that job that I understood that the values of the leader of that organisation were so misaligned with mine that I never bought in. So I was constantly banging my head against a brick wall and I was getting absolutely nowhere. And it was about values. If I'd known that those values were completely inconsistent with mine, I probably wouldn't have worked there for as long as I did. So for me, it's about know who you are, know what you stand for, and just go and get it.
How would you define EQ and what does it mean to you?
Okay, EQ, emotional intelligence, to me means being able to read the cues, the emotional cues in the room. And as a leader, that translates to using those cues to motivate your team, create a safe environment where they can thrive, and then also just being really self-aware.
Its ability to grasp the situation quickly and to be able to relate to people very easily is increasingly important for for an accounting environment, which is quite different from traditional accounting of crunching numbers. It's no longer like it. You actually deal with people very often on a regular basis for various reasons to help them achieve their goals as well as your own.
If IQ is about knowing your stuff, then EQ is about knowing yourself and having an awareness for others. That's probably the simplest way I can explain it. So it's not about what you know, it's about how you do what you do. Why is EQ as important in business as it is in life? EQ is about people. So there are people in life, friends, family, in my case children. There are people in business, colleagues, people that work for you, the cleaner, all walks of people in all walks of life. So EQ, or having an awareness for yourself and others, is important wherever there are people, including you.
So I think in business these days, it's really interesting, right? Because of the tech boom, a lot of businesses are now offering a product where you're not interacting with people. You're kind of just on your phone, right? You don't market on billboards anymore, you market on Instagram. And I think as that boom continues, that human contact and that emotional intelligence will become the value proposition of a lot of firms and a lot of businesses. And especially when you're creating a team, if you can create a team that that's operating in a high EQ environment, that's actually a real skill, like building that trust where people banter with each other, they have fun when they're working.
Sense of humor.
Sense of humor, yeah. IQ is really easy to build, right? You hire really smart people, you give them the right training, but EQ is really hard to build. And I think that's why it's so important in the business environment and as important as it is in life.
Absolutely. A lot of times it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it.
Yeah.
What traits does someone display if they have a high EQ?
I think about EQ as having two components. There's the inside or the me bit and the outside, and which is the you bit. In terms of the me bit, it's about having that self-awareness, knowing who I am, how I come across, understanding what motivates you, being resilient as a person, all of those sort of inside things that only you can control. In terms of the outside looking stuff, it's about how you come across, your levels of empathy and social skills. So those are things that some of us have to work really hard at. It doesn't come naturally for everybody, but it's about knowing who you are and how you relate to other people in social situations.
Just because someone might be a bit introverted compared to someone who's more, extroverted, doesn't mean they have a lower EQ. Because a lot of times they can relate to people a lot better because of their own personal experience. Likewise, people who are extroverted may not have a high EQ.
Yeah, and I actually think introverts in some ways have a higher tendency of having high IQ because they observe a lot more than extroverts do. So that's a really good point actually. It's not like a hard line.
It's not a hard line.
How do you think leadership and EQ are linked? If EQ is about people, leadership is about leading people to achieve a vision. So central to both of those things are people, both yourself as a leader and your teams that you're leading and bringing with you.
So thinking about leadership and EQ, in different situations you have different leadership styles that will involve different level of skill. So for EQ, sometimes they're linked. Most of the times, in my opinion, they're linked intrinsically. Having a high EQ really helps with bringing out your leadership style and be a charismatic leader. And being able to motivate people, you really need to be people to be on your side and to share the same vision, so you can take them from where they are into realizing their vision with you and not working against you. So having a high EQ really means that you can help people better. And you can also motivate people better.
Yeah, and I think the motivation is key, for the link between a leader and EQ, because that's what your job is as a leader, right? And you were reflecting on this earlier, that the difference between a leader and a manager is that a leader will actually bring people along on the journey, whereas a manager will say, here are your tasks, these are the deadlines, come talk to me. So motivation, I think, is really key, and I think the ability to motivate someone really well and in the right way and to understand what their motivations are, because not everyone has the same motivations. So if you have a high EQ as a leader, you're actually taking the time out to understand what motivates your team and then acting on those motivations to bring everyone along. What can students do to improve their EQ?
I think probably working on their self-awareness, learning how to keep their cool, being quite resilient. So when something bad happens, is it really that bad, or the ability to be able to recover from that really quickly? All of those things help with building or forming that really high level of EQ.
There's a lot of things students can do to improve their EQ. I would suggest a student should start with being able to understand themselves and internalize some of these factors and things like what are they good at and what are they not so good at, and that involves getting feedback from people around them, people they work with, their family members. Once they get a feeling of their self
And who they are.
and
yeah.
who they are
Yeah.
and their strengths and weaknesses, they can then realize their dream and project a persona that is quite powerful and be able to motivate people later down the track.
Yeah, no, it's very true, and I like what you said about getting feedback. I think the external application of that is when you're at university, you actually get the chance to work in lots of groups and lots of teams and do assignments and stuff. And my advice would be not to stick with that core group that you do everything with. So yep, this is my group of 5 friends. We go and do all the case comps together. We go and do all the volunteer stuff together, because you learn a lot about yourself, but you learn more if you diversify the group that you work with. And when you actually come to work, like, your friends aren't going to come with you. And just actually exposing yourself to multiple personalities and working styles, building that really early on will really pay off when you start your career.
Do you think having a high EQ is becoming more important in the workplace? How do you think managers look for this?
Yes, I think so. To answer the question, I think yes, high EQ is becoming very important. And I think the more we start working with hybrid teams where, I've been on so many projects lately where you're not just a New Zealand team, like you have 2 people working with you from London, you maybe have 1 person with you from Australia, and you're all working across different time zones, different pressures, different working styles. And EQ is becoming increasingly more important as you work in these hybrid teams.
What skills do you need to become an effective leader?
People skills would be the easy answer. I think if I think about, reflect on my career, IQ, or the things that you learn, technical information, technical knowledge, are the things that helped me in my early days as an accountant. So knowing how to do accounting, if you like, whether that was auditing or whether that was tax or any of those sort of branches of accounting. In terms of how those skills are still important in leadership, you need to know your stuff, right? That's the basics. But the empathy, or what's now called emotional intelligence, that's the stuff that counts as a leader or a manager.
Transparency and resilience. Without resilience, you'll fall the first time you're challenged or the first time the going gets tough. Resilience is about taking risks and seeing strategy for what it is, but it's more than that. Resilience is about knowing you've got a safe place to fall and you've got the courage to stand back up. Trust is about believing in the people around you. For me, if I read this question, it falls into 3 categories. One is skills, so what is it I do? How do I need to be more effective? But if you ask it backwards, as how is a leader effective when they have the right skills, you probably get a better answer, and that is to ask the people they're leading how they feel.
Do you have a mentor? And if so, do you think this is important?
I think mentoring is really important, which is why, that's the premise behind the Mentor Me Fiji Foundation. I guess I've had a lot of, I wouldn't call them mentors because they don't know that they're my mentors, but there's been a lot of people in the firm at Deloitte and people that I've met while I was developing my social enterprises that I really look up to. So I can't really name one, but I will name the trait that I identify my mentors with. And it's always people who have fought some sort of odds to get to where they are today. They all have. I have about 6 people that I really consider my mentors. And each of them have had a different fight that they've had to fight to get to a leadership position.
I do have a mentor. I actually have 3 of them that I would call on regularly. My boss is a very important mentor of mine and helps me in day-to-day navigating through daily challenges on the job. I have an executive coach who doesn't work with me directly, and she provides me with that someone that just calls it how it is and tells you to keep it in check. So she sort of keeps me sane, if you like. And actually this one is probably a little bit of a curveball one, but I have the pleasure of having an assistant. And she's a mentor because she teaches me, helps me keep it real, helps me to check in with my job and my team. What can students do now during their tertiary studies to work towards becoming a manager or a leader? It's a really tricky one. I'm not sure that as a student you necessarily know that you want to be a manager or a leader, and I don't think that I necessarily did. What I think is the types of skills that I think are important now, though, is the ability to make sense of a lot of information. So if we think about the connected world, the digital world, you know, all the answers, the internet is at your fingertips, and when you need to make sense of that information and make a really informed decision or choice or make a call about something, I think that's a really important skill to have. And I would encourage students to probably learn or pursue subjects that are quite broad, because it just adds to that level of information, and all of that provides context. And I certainly know that weird papers that I did, and one that sticks out in my head is organisational psychology. And at the time I just knew it was something that I was really interested in. What I didn't know is that, you know, 10 or 15 years into my career, those skills were things that I'd be drawing on in becoming a leader or a manager.
Wow, I loved hearing how those speakers rose to leadership and the diversity of their personal stories. My key takeaways were finding out what leadership and EQ are and why they're important. Recruiters are on the lookout for candidates with a high EQ and leadership skills when filling graduate roles, so it's never too early to start refining your skills. Having a mentor is something I can do now. It's not just for people in executive roles. What skills I need to work on so I can become an effective leader, and what I can do to plan and start my path to a management role. So now it's up to you to put all the tips from this session into practice and start thinking about your long-term goals and the actions you can take now to reach it sooner rather than later. To continue your career journey, check out youunlimitedanz.com for more information on upskilling, tips on job seeking, and inspirational stories from chartered accountants making a difference.